Over the past few years, there's been a big resurgence of the classic shooter in the indie scene. We're talking inspirations like Blood, Heretic, the original Doom, and even some newer titles like Quake can be seen in the lifeblood of these new indie shooters. Thus, they've been dubbed the boomer shooter. Okay, maybe the classic shooters don't go back quite that far, but calling them Gen X shooters would be lame. Besides, boomer shooter has a nice ring to it. Today, we'll be talking about the spearhead of the boomer shooter resurgence. The one that got the ball rolling and showed that the classic formula has stood and will stand the test of time. That game is DUSK. DUSK had an early access period, but released fully with its 1.0 update towards the end of 2018, and now at the end of 2023 has seen another update, adding Steam Workshop with their own mod, so to speak, to kick off this fairly major update. This mod is called DUSK HD, and replaces the entire look of the game with a new, more detailed coat of paint. I thought this would be an excellent time to discuss, or dusk us, the game. That was terrible. DUSK's story isn't one that's really told to you. I mean, this really isn't that kind of game, so there's no cutscenes or long monologues from any of the enemies. But there is still a story here, and how it shows it to you is quite clever. When you boot up DUSK, you're here for one reason: to shoot. But throughout its levels, you'll get the idea of what's going on and who you're fighting. Don't misunderstand me though, I'm not saying there's some deep psychological thoughts on the meaning of life. I mean, just look at this guy. When you're confronted with these white-hooded figures calling you non-believer and heretic, and the game gives you a shotgun, I mean, come on, the solution is simple. No, DUSK's story comes from its progression throughout its levels, and as you go through the 3 acts, you'll start to see more and more fantastical things. It makes for both fun level design and good world building, and the game has better gameplay and atmosphere for it. The levels in DUSK start out fairly uninteresting, with lots of barns and backwater middle of nowheres, but after the first couple of levels, things start to pick up. This works well for the gameplay though, as you'll be given a few standard, not too complicated levels to mess around with and get the hang of the controls. It won't take you long to get the hang of these controls either, as things here are fluid and tight. Movement is fast, and jumping both keeps and boosts your momentum, so bunny hopping around these levels is really fun. Dodging shots while blasting enemies away feels great, and the enemies are chunky enough to be easy to hit, while also having some skinnier enemies requiring a bit more precision. The guns here feel incredible to use as well. Each one has some serious oomph to it, and each one has plenty of ammo scattered around as well, so if you're like me and stick with the super shotgun most of the way through, you'll, most of the time, have ammo for it. And I mean, yeah, the dual-wield lever action shotguns are cool, but you just can't get better than a super shotgun, especially this one. It's a pretty standard arsenal, but that isn't necessarily a bad thing. The arsenal here has everything you would want, from a hunting rifle to a machine gun to DUSK's version of the BFG, the Riveter. The Riveter is a powerhouse, and ammo is often scattered throughout the secrets you'll find in each level. Secrets in DUSK are very rewarding to find. Most of them hold a stockpile of special ammo or health and morale, the game's version of armor, but sometimes they also contain weapons that you wouldn't normally have at that point. The best example of this is in the second level, where after doing a bit of exploring and Easter egg hunting, you can find a secret stash full of a ton of weapons and power-ups. This boosts your arsenal really early on, and for repeat playthroughs means you won't have to go long without your favorite weapon. Secrets like this are all over DUSK, and even the act of finding them is fun, as some of these are really well hidden. Secrets can be kind of hit or miss in these boomer shooters, but here in DUSK, they are done wonderfully. DUSK in its original form looked good, and tried to capture the blocky, Quake-like look with a lot of muted colors, especially in the earlier levels. DUSK HD keeps the same look while also making everything more detailed. Everything looks great, and the biggest changes you'll see will be in the weapons and the enemies. Enemies look fantastic, with the Scarecrow being my favorite change. They all have a lot more detail and showcase more of the artistic design of the enemies. Guns now look like actual guns, and less like sticks you'd find in the backyard as kids that kinda, sorta resembled what could potentially, maybe, be a weapon in a dark room. The HD update looks great, and the best part is that it's free, so there's really no reason not to at least try it. Things look fantastic and still retain that iconic look that DUSK has always had. The last thing I'd like to mention is the music. There is no better fit for this game. Andrew Hulshul absolutely knocked it out of the park here, as he does with any game he touches. There's so much variation, and it captures each level perfectly, with heavy tracks for heavy combat levels and slower, more spooky tracks for the slower levels. It's incredible, and ties the whole game together with a neat, metallic, and heavy bow. DUSK may be the first of the resurgence, alongside a medieval, but still shows everyone how it's done. It's the golden standard for a fun and fast-paced shooter, with plenty of accessibility and goofy settings to mess around with. DUSK is a great time and shows just how timeless the boomer shooter formula is. There's a reason people still talk about Doom, and it's the same reason I'm talking about DUSK over 5 years later.